Hey squad, welcome back. Now, not too long ago, I created a couple of videos that have proven to be really useful to many of you out there. The first one was how to create your 808 basses using Logic Pro X Alchemy. And the second one was how to create your trap style hi-hats, again in Logic Pro X using the Arpeggiator. Now for all of you guys who use Ableton Live, I'm going to show you exactly how to build those cool 808s from scratch, as well as the syncopated trap style hi-hats that you love so much. So make sure you check this whole video out because I'm sure you're going to find it useful. And remember, the drum sample pack that I'm using in this video is available for you to download for free right now. There'll be links on the screen as well as in the description. Now let's get into it. Okay, so to get things started, the first thing we want to do is create a brand new MIDI track. So we're inserting that there, and here's our brand new MIDI track. Now we need to insert a instrument rack. So let's pull that and drop that in here. Track 14. Let's rename this. We're going to use the key command, Command R, 808 bass. Now an instrument rack instance is brilliant because what this allows you to do is combine multiple sound sources, whether it be synths, samplers, or drum machines. You can combine them together to work in harmony and in unison. So what we're going to do, we're going to come to analog and we're going to drag and drop analog in there. Okay, that's our first synth. And let's go like this, reveal that. And the other thing we're going to drop in is we're going to drop a sampler in as well. So we're going to pull a sampler down here and let's drop that in there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch off the output of the sampler because we're not working on that to start off with. We're going to be kicking things off with the analog synth. Now here's your analog synth, and it's got lots of controllers, which for some of you might be a little bit confusing, but soon I'm going to be doing a few videos giving the basics of synth programming, and hopefully that might help some of you who haven't really looked into that side of things before. Anyway, this synthesizer has got two oscillators, oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. And oscillators are the parts of the synth that generate sound or tone. And because we've got two here, both oscillators will combine to give you the overall sound of the instrument. So to start off with, we're going to switch oscillator 2 off, and we're just going to work on oscillator 1, which is this one up here. And when I switch this on, you'll see this row of controls all are linked to oscillator 1, and the bottom row of controls linked to oscillator 2. Okay, so the first thing you want to do here is we're going to choose our shape or waveform. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 to choose from. We're going to go to the top one, which is our sine wave. Select that, and we're going to press the keyboard and have a listen. Okay, straight away, you can tell that the sine wave is very much the core of what your 808 bass is going to be made up of. Okay, the next thing we do is we're going to adjust what's known as the pitch envelope. I'm going to pull this up like so. Okay, and as you can see, the parameters along here are changing. Now the pitch envelope, there are two controls. There's the initial start point, the starting pitch. I'll push it up a bit more so you can hear what I'm talking about. But if I bring it down a bit more, I'm going to leave it around 70. So it starts a little bit higher and then drops down. And then the time is how long it takes to actually reach the actual pitch that you're aiming for. So I'm going to shorten that. And without making this adjustment, you'll just get the pure tone. You won't get initial impulse at the start. I'm going to come down probably to about 6%. 7%. I'm just going to drop this probably about there. Cool. Yeah, that's working for me. Okay, so that's the pitch envelope sorted. Now the next thing I'm going to adjust is what's known as the volume envelope. So I'm going to click over here where it says amp 1. So this is the amplifier. Just click on that. And as you can see, the parameters in this window changes. And right here, we've got our envelope. We've got our attack, our decay, our sustain, and our release times over here. So what I want to happen is when I hit the note on the keyboard, I don't want the note to sustain, like I want it to decay to nothing pretty much. And when I remove my finger, I want it to release, have a short release time after I've taken my finger off the keyboard. Okay, so what you do here is you reduce the decay time to 0. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to reduce the sustain to 0 as well. And now I'm going to increase the decay. So you hear that nice smooth decay. I'm holding the key. I'm holding the note on the keyboard. And it decays naturally, okay? Now I can adjust the release time. But that's okay, that I can work with that. So just to recap, we've set our waveform to a sine wave. We adjusted our pitch envelope here. We adjusted our volume envelope here. And the next thing we're going to do, we're going to just set up the synth so it's a monophonic synth and not polyphonic. So polyphonic means I can sound more than one note at a time, like a chord. Right, we don't want that. We just want to be able to sound a single note at any one time. So what we do, we come over here to the master section. So click anywhere near volume, and we come here to voices and choose mono. Okay, now that does something really interesting. So if I press a note like G, I press another note straight afterwards, the first note will cut out as soon as the second note is played. So I'm holding down my first note and I'm just simply pressing the second note and releasing it, and what you get a switching effect between the two. So by setting the synth to mono, you can get that nice effect. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to set our glide up or portamento. So just come over here and you click glide there and have a listen to this now. You get a nice glide. Let's go a little bit extreme. That's too much. I'll say about 55% would be a good number. Okay, cool. The next thing we want to do is we want to adjust the filter. We've got a low pass filter, which is switched in here. This is the filter section, and we can choose from different types of filters. We're going to stick with the one that's already engaged, which is a low pass 24 dB per octave filter. If I was to take it all the way down and filter out all of the higher frequencies, this is what you get. You get hardly anything. However, it's up to you how much you want to filter, if anything at all. I'm actually going to leave it open for now. So that's it for Oscillator 1. Let's go over to Oscillator 2 now. I'm just going to switch off Oscillator 1, and I'm going to choose, instead of a sine wave, I'm going to go for a Sawtooth waveform, which is this one right here. And this is what it sounds like. Very buzzy, tons of harmonics, whereas the sine wave is just a pure tone. Okay, so we want to add a little bit of buzz to our sound by using this waveform on this oscillator. Okay, so at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to just set our filter up. Switch on this filter right here. I'm going to leave it on the low pass filter setting. And then I'm just going to come back over here to the control, and I'm going to just reduce this all the way down. Just pull down on this until the signal generated from this oscillator will only pass through this filter. It won't go through both. You can set it up to go through both by adjusting this here, but I'm only sending it to filter 2. Okay, and now I'm going to switch on amplifier 2 for the oscillator 2. I'm going to start filtering. Maybe around there, add a little bit of resonance. Okay, so we're now going to adjust the volume envelope. So let's just click here, and what we're looking at now is the volume envelope. I'm going to reduce the decay all the way to 0 and the sustain all the way to 0. Okay, and now I'm just going to increase the decay slightly. Probably around there. And I'm going to take off a bit of the release time. Okay, and then all I need to do now is just adjust the actual volume of the oscillator, and let's mix them both together. So switch this on. So this is oscillator 1 on its own, both combined, and then just pulling this down just to give that little extra buzz. Switch it off, pure bit of buzz. We're going to add some saturation in a second, which will bring out some more of the harmonics. Okay, so we're almost there. We're now going to add an audio effect, and this time we're going to be adding a saturator. Now this is going to add some saturation and some additional harmonic and warm things up a bit. I'm not dropping it over here. I'm dropping it right in this gap right here. So it only affects the analog synth and not all of the instruments in this rack. Okay, so I'm just going to use let's switch the hot swap on, and let's go here, and we're just going to insert the warm up lows. Go for that plugin. Okay. And we're just going to increase the drive a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to switch on the soft clip. Okay, I'd say about 10%. Cool. And you can choose whether you want to keep the color on or not. So I'm just switching it off now. It does actually make a difference whether you use it or not. Again, you can continue to balance the volume of the oscillator too. Yeah, and you set that to taste. Okay, so let's leave the synth and jump over to the sampler. I'm going to drop in here a kick drum sample, and I'm taking it from my Body Blows drum kits, which you can download right now. So drop it into the sampler right here, and that's the sample right there. Let's mute the analog synth and bring on the kick. Right. So there's a couple of things that we need to do to this kick to get it exactly where we want it. So first thing we need to do is make sure we're on sample, and then come over here to scale. I want to bring the scale all the way down to 0. Okay. Cool. The next thing I want to do, I want to set the sampler up so that it's running in mono as well. We're just going to reduce the voices so that we only have a single voice being triggered at any one time. And to do so, you need to come over to Filter / Global. And just down here, you'll see Voices, and you go to 1. Okay. And only one note will trigger at any one time. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to switch on a filter, and we're going to switch to a band pass filter, something like this, and just move this along. And you decide how much of the kick you actually want to hear. You just want that little bit of a thud, not a major thud, but just a little bit of an impact when the bass actually hits. I mean, you're going to have a kick drum playing in your song anyway, but this just helps to give it a bit more dynamic. Okay, let's try that with the actual bass switched on. So there's not much left to do. So that we have a consistent velocity across the whole keyboard, we're going to introduce a MIDI effect, and we're going to introduce a velocity limiter. So if we come to velocity right here, I'm just going to go for fix 1, and I'm going to drop it just before the instrument rack. Okay, so right here. So no matter how hard or soft I hit my keyboard, only a set velocity will be output. And I'm going to ease this. So you can adjust this up to whatever setting you want. About here is fine for me. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back to my oscillator 1 on my analog synth. I think I'll just increase the decay time a little bit more. And just take down the volume just a bit more on the oscillator 2. And now the very last thing I'm going to add to this is a nice chorus. And you can decide whether this works for you or not, but we're going to go to Audio Effects. We're going to come up to Chorus. and we're going to use the slow panning chorus. So I'm just going to grab that and drop it over here. So this is going to affect the overall sound. So let's go for that. Now that adds a nice bit of width to the actual sound. So now let's put this bass sound in use and just hear how it sounds in context with this really short 8-bar idea I've come up with. Let's hear that. Just stay tuned. I'm going to show you real quick how you can come up with some fantastic hi-hat triggers that will work really well with this. And I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, so time now for me to show you how to create those syncopated trap style hi-hats that you love so much. Okay, so the first thing we do is, again, we're going to create a brand new MIDI track. Now let's bring this down here, drop that there. And I'm going to call this hi-hats. Great. And again, we're going to use a instrument rack, drop that in there. We're going to go to MIDI effects, and just like we did before, we're going to grab a velocity limiter. This time I'm going to go for fix 96 and drop that just here before the actual rack. This will send a fixed velocity through to the rack and whatever else is being played within that. And now we're going to go back to instruments, and I'm going to bring in a drum rack. I'm going to drop that in here. Great. Okay, we're ready to go. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import another drum sample from the Body Blows drum kits. Hats number 5. I'm going to drop it on C1. Okay, and that's straight in there. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's just open this up. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is go back to our MIDI effects plugins, and I'm going to grab an arpeggiator, and I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to go for the top one here and drop this here just between the instrument rack and the drum rack right here. So in terms of the chain, we've got the velocity limiter, we've got the instrument rack, and within the instrument rack we have this drum rack, but just before this first drum rack right here we have the arpeggiator, and my arpeggiator setting is 1/16th division. In fact, I'm going to change the trigger rate to 1/8. Cool. And if you remember, the velocity limiter determines the velocity. In fact, it's a fixed velocity, so it doesn't matter how hard I play this note, it's always going to be the same. Okay, the next thing I want to do is duplicate this drum rack. So I'm going to select it first. Then I'm going to go Command D. I've duplicated it. But this time on this duplicate, I'm going to drag this sample over to D1. So if I was to hit D1 now. Cool. So C1, which is the first one. D1 is the second one. Cool. And this time on this rack here, I'm actually going to change the rate to 1/16. Cool. So if I was to rename this drum rack 1/8 and this one 1/16. Cool. And I'm going to duplicate again. So click on that one and Command D. I'm going to rename this one hat 1/32. I'll move this along E1 and I will change, just make sure that you've got the right one selected. I will change the rate
to 1/32. Okay, so now what we've got is this. And of course, we could go higher. Let's just do one more. Duplicate that. Command D and then Command R. Rename that. Make sure this is selected. Change the rate now to 1/64. Move the actual note F1. So now on each note, we've got variation. Okay, so let's try working this into the arrangement. I mean, we can always add effects. We could EQ the hi-hats and you can mess with that. Let's play this back and see what we can come up with. I'm not going to record anything. I'm just going to freestyle and punch the notes in and you can hear what's possible. Loads and loads of fun putting that in. It's going to save you a whole load of time instead of having to draw those notes in individually, and by actually punching them in on the fly is really going to be a lot more exciting than actually having to draw them in. Okay squad, so I really do hope you found this video useful, and remember to drop me a line to let me know what you think. I'd also appreciate your support because I'm putting some music out at the moment, and if you could check out the links below just to give me a bit of support, maybe check out the tracks on Spotify, Apple Music and so on, I'd be very grateful. And don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and finally switch on your notification bell so when my next video drops you'll find out straight away. It's great having you on board and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon. I'm Dr. Duce. Peace.